Hello, folks. It's me again. Hope everyone's well. Life is treating you well, and all things are being awesome. So, here's what I'm doing right now. This is more going to be a channel update thing, because I've had a busy couple of weeks. I was actually going to do a breakdown on the Savage World port of Rifts, because I have read it, and it's this is the player's guide that's out now. I've read it. It's really quite entertaining. I had a lot of talk with some friends about Rifts this past weekend, so it was on my mind. That said, I had a lot on my plate this weekend, and I just didn't get it together. So it'll be something I work on this week, this coming week. Another thing of interest. I am joining the Internet Creators Guild. I'm going to go ahead and shell out the money and join that. I think it is a good idea, done by good people, and worth investing in both time and money to see that it works out. I think that ultimately I would love to have more resources to teach me how to be a better YouTuber, a better video producer, on top of my already existing knowledge of games and how they work. So having that as a resource is probably going to be a good idea. Last thing I'm going to mention is, so I was thinking about doing this episode and asking some of my friends who have had, for decades, to come on and talk about their perspective on games, game theory, game rules, setting design, things like that. I have a lot of very talented friends who have a lot to offer in the realm of thinking about these things. And then it occurred to me while I was going through the list of people I might ask, that some of the people I might ask were women, and it just triggered the, wait, do I know of any women YouTubers who cover just role-playing games? There are some who cover LARPs fairly exclusively. And then there are some who cover tabletop games, like tabletop board games. And there are even some that focus mainly on video games that do a little bit of tabletop gaming on the side. But, people whose their primary channel focus is role-playing games, much like the primary channel focus for my channel is role-playing games. I talk about other things, but the primary focus is always on tabletop role-playing games. Even if I'm talking about video games, it's usually how it fits into the perspective of tabletop role-playing games. So there weren't a lot of women that I could think of off the top of my head who had shows set up that way. And that was something that was curious to me. So I went to social media and I asked about that. I was like, I can't think of any. And that seems a shame because, half the gamers I know are women. You would think that half the gaming shows I see would be hosted by women. And maybe I'm just missing the ones that are out there. And it turns out I was missing some of the ones that were out there. And the whole experience actually sort of drove home one of my issues with social networks. Facebook, I had a range of posts from the RPG Brigade basically saying, oh, here's one you probably haven't heard of. Here's one that you probably haven't heard of. Hey, this is a great idea to give people an idea to suggest ones that they like and so on. And I was like, yeah, that's great. That's awesome. There were some people who had I don't know if they thought they were being trollish, but there was certainly a sort of trollish thread to some of the responses I got. I didn't think it would be all that controversial to say, are there women YouTubers out there? They are strongly represented in the gaming community, but I couldn't think of any in the actual gaming discussion sphere as far as YouTube goes. And some people thought that derided me for asking the question. And that sort of drove home why I don't spend much time on Facebook. Because I run into that reaction a lot more on Facebook than I do on some of the other social networks that I hang out on. Now, this may be because Facebook is huge. Almost everybody's on Facebook. So eventually I'm going to run into more of those types than I am on some of the ones that have less of an adoption. I asked on Google Plus the same question and got one response from a friend who was like, I wonder if the reason you don't see many of them is because people, have not traditionally, but often, traditionally is the wrong word, but often have treated women who talk about geeky or gaming-related subjects poorly. And it's true. They have. And very poorly. Like, I kind of want to find some of the people involved, and beat them with, a metaphorical stick. Obviously, I wouldn't advocate violence. But some of the people get really just unacceptably bad towards women who talk about geeky things. And he rightly posited that possibly some of them were afraid to talk out on, open formats like YouTube because they were afraid of getting that kind of response. It turns out there are quite a number of them, and I'll include some links in the show description to a few that have gotten to me, but I haven't been able to go through and watch all of the episodes, so I can't make personal recommendations on which ones are which, as far as which are good and which were not my cup of tea kind of thing. But I didn't know they existed until I started the thread, so I'll put it in the show notes because it's nice to know that it's out there. But yeah, it did sort of drive home one of the things I hate about the internet, is that seemingly innocuous things can turn into philosophical dick-waving contests, and yes, that's a deliberate use of imagery here, given the subject matter. It makes me angry when I see it. So I don't know. Anyways, it was both a mix of good and bad experiences just out of asking the question, I guess, is where I'm at on that. The majority of the responses were fairly positive. Oh yeah, here's one that you'll probably like, and here's one I like, and here's one that you maybe haven't heard of, and that kind of stuff was the responses I was looking for. Here's a bunch of stuff that you might not have heard of. Oh, okay, cool. I'm happy to hear about them. I subbed to all of them because I was like, sure, I'm always interested in hearing new voices. But the other side of that was there are always a few people who feel like they have to turn it into some sort of statement, and it really annoys the crap out of me when that gets done. Anyways, this is mainly a channel update. I'm still making stuff. I'm actually probably going to make more stuff going forward. I hope you'll show up and check it out. And subscribe and like and share and, do all the usual things. Check out the Patreon if you feel up to it. I know not everybody's blessed with funds, but if you can afford it, it'd be nice. But you'll see more content out of me going forward, I think, because I now have a firmer grasp of what my plans are going to be for the next several months. Work is stabilizing somewhat, and so you may see more content from me. Oddly enough, I'm not going to Gen Con this year, but it does look like I'm going to Worldcon. And it might be interesting to see a traditional science fiction film, or a traditional science fiction convention, the biggest of the traditional science fiction conventions, really, from a gamer perspective. I don't know. There's some thoughts that can go in that way. But anyways, like I said, subscribe, like, share with all the people, and try and be nice to each other. See ya.